The Order of Lazarus. Ye burning sands of Arabia drank the blood of a dying crusade. The holy wars had stalled, and the final stronghold of the West was suffocating under a relentless, brutal siege. The sky was permanently choked with thick ash, casting the shattered limestone walls in a sickly, pallid light. The grand, wealthy armies of the West, the Templars and the Hospitallers, were already retreating deep into the inner city to secure their relics and their nobility. But the shattered outer walls still needed to be held. A sacrifice was required. Salvation was not granted from the heavens, it was bought in the mud. The bloody burden of the rearguard fell to the outcasts, the afflicted, the condemned. It fell to the Order of Saint Lazarus. These were men already touched by death, chosen to stand in the breach against an ocean of steel. They were the meat wave, a barricade built entirely of human flesh and desperate faith, designed only to slow the inevitable. At the center of the slaughter stood the captain of the Lazarus Guard. His armor was heavily dented, his tabard heavy with grime and gore. He swung a notched broadsword, cleaving through the endless tide of enemies that surged up the rubble. He had long stopped counting the days, or the dead. He only knew the heavy pull of his sword and the screams of his brothers. They fought not for victory, but for seconds. Every shattered shield was a moment bought for the fleeing city behind them. But flesh, no matter how devout, eventually fails. The captain parried a desperate blow, his armored boots slipping in the bloody mud. He looked to his left and his right. The line was gone. Only a handful of limping, bleeding survivors remained, clustered tightly around him. Realizing the breach was completely lost, the captain bellowed an order. He pointed his blood-stained gauntlet toward the ruined streets of the city. The survivors turned, abandoning the wall. They retreated into the maze of the ruined city, a desperate scramble to escape the absolute slaughter at their backs. But the enemy was not just behind them, it was in the sky. A massive trebuchet boulder, the size of a wagon, arced over the crumbling walls. It struck the ancient cobblestone street directly behind the fleeing Lazarus monks with the wrath of a god. The impact was catastrophic. The ground did not just crater, the ancient bedrock itself violently gave way. Swallowed by a blinding cloud of thick dust, the street collapsed. The captain and his men were violently pulled down, tumbling down a steep, treacherous incline of loose stone and jagged rubble, plunging deep into the bowels of the earth. They fell completely out of the holy war, swallowed by the dark. They crashed onto a hard, smooth floor. The deafening roar of the battle above was instantly muffled, replaced by the chaotic sound of falling rock, and then, profound, heavy silence. The captain, groaning in pain, pushed himself up from the rubble. He struck a flint, lighting a makeshift torch. The orange flame flickered, illuminating something entirely unexpected. They had not fallen into a cellar or a sewer. The firelight danced across the faces of ancient, silent statues. Towering figures of forgotten kings loomed in the shadows. The architecture was impossibly old, distinctly Sumerian and Arabian, completely untouched by the battle raging above. They had breached an ancient crypt, sealed for over a millennium. A tomb that predated their holy wars, their empires, and their god. Drawn by a presence he could not name, the captain limped forward, his torch raised high. His surviving men gathered behind him, staring in exhausted awe. In the absolute center of the crypt, resting atop a simple, unadorned stone altar, sat an object. The captain approached slowly, the clinking of his battered armor echoing loudly in the dead silence of the tomb. There, resting in the dust, was not a hoard of gold or a holy weapon of war. It was a single, solitary object. A flat square of dark green jade, roughly the size of a man's hand, clearly a single tile taken from something larger. Etched deeply into its polished, non-reflective surface were elegant, alien characters written in pure, hammered gold. It was entirely inanimate, yet it commanded the heavy silence of the room. To Emperor Ashoka, it was a fragment of a vast truth. To the ancient artisan who carved it, it was a tile from a burial suit. But the captain knew nothing of emperors, of Ashoka, or of the distant east. Standing in the blood of his brothers, holding the green stone in his armored hand, the exhausted holy man looked upon the golden script. Stripped of its history, He saw only what his desperate faith allowed him to see. He believed, with every fiber of his shattered soul, that he had found the mythical emerald tablet. In the quiet dark of a forgotten tomb, new, darker crusade had just begun. This single, small square of green stone would soon trigger a ruthless hunt for power, and the meaning of existence, sealing the fate of their order for centuries to come.